Hi everyone, it's Elise from Kid and Clouder Colouring Classes and welcome to another colouring tip video, short videos to answer popular questions you've been asking about your colouring. Now in this video, I'm going to be talking to you about how to choose paper for your pencils, the paper that I use, and the difference between using smooth and textured paper. I've had a lot of people ask about this lately, and especially because when some people are using different papers, they end up getting different results to what they may see me doing in our online colouring classes. So paper's a pretty big thing. It's going to impact the blendability of the pencils, so how smooth it looks. It's going to impact the vibrancy of your colours, and also using effects like a white pencil or a blender pencil as well. So I'm going to talk about this today and some of the papers that I see people using quite often. Now, I've got some helpful links in the description below the video. So firstly, what you're going to find is our pencil basics blending video. So this is really, really important. If you've just found this video tutorial here today and you haven't seen our pencil blending basics video, please do go and watch that because it's going to show you how we do our blending, getting everything nice and smooth and build up our layers of color. Now, when I color with pencils like I do in our coloring classes, I use just the pencils themselves. So I'm not using any solvents or Gamsol or anything like that. That breaks the pigment down into a paint-like sort of substance, and you'll lose a little bit of control and vibrancy. So this way, you're able to really build up the color. You have control over really creating that depth and creating that detail as well. So take a look at that video tutorial because that's going to go through all about how we do your pencil basic blending. You'll also find links to my website, kidandclouder.com. That's where you'll find some of our free and online colouring classes, but there's also a really helpful colouring FAQs page there. I've got a huge list of papers that you can try for your pencils that are all available internationally. I think most are even on Amazon as well, and that way you can take a look at different things that are available that you may want to try. So I can't go through all the papers here today just because there are so many available. So I've picked 4 for us to look at. So you'll see at the top here, I've got Canson Teintes. Now just take note of the spelling because it's French. A lot of people spell this wrong and have trouble finding this paper. Now this is my all-time favorite. This is what I use in all of our coloring classes. The next one here is Canson Drawing 220. So you'll notice it's Canson. Canson is the brand. The reason why I picked this one to showcase today is it's basically the cheaper version of the Teintes. So this one's pretty easy and readily available to get. In some countries, you'll notice that it's called Canson CA Grain, so it has a slightly different name. You don't want just Canson Drawing. Just Canson Drawing is a lower weight paper and it's smoother, which is more for sketching rather than the type of coloring we do here. I'm also going to be showing you on a smooth cardstock, like what marker users would use or card makers would have in their stash, and also just standard copy or printer paper. So I'll talk about each of these and we'll go through some of the differences. Now first up, let me just explain about the type of paper we want to use with our pencils to get a really smooth and vibrant look. Now I've just got a picture. This is our Magical Moments coloring class here. This is our current coloring class of the month, and I colored this with my Prismacolor pencils on that Teintes paper. Now Teintes, the reason why I like this paper is it is a very high premium quality paper. It's one of the only dual-sided papers on the market. Now what I mean by that is when we work with pencils, we want to work with a paper that has texture. And this texture is actually called tooth. And it's actually, hopefully the camera will pick this up, but it's these tiny little imprints on the surface of the paper. So as you come through and you layer up your pencils, your pigment sits in those different heights of the paper. And that's what allows you to create these really beautiful complex blends and to make it look really smooth. Whereas when you're using your smooth cardstock, you'll notice there it's a little bit harder to build up that color, and we generally get lines between the colors. I'll come back to that when we address the smooth cardstock, but I just wanted to talk about the optimal thing that you're really looking for when you're coloring with your pencils. So we always want something with a little bit of that grip, that tooth to really hold and layer up the pigment. That's going to help get your blending nice and smooth. Now, Mi-Teintes, the one that I like to use, it's actually dual-sided like I mentioned before, so it's printed both sides. Most pencil papers you'll see are rough one side, smooth the other, but it's just printed on the one side. The smoother reverse isn't really for use. You want the rougher side. However, with Mi-Teintes, what you'll notice on the back here is, hopefully this picks up as well, this has like a honeycomb print, so it's like little circles. This is because this paper can also be used for pastels and chalks. So this stronger tooth is going to hold that medium better, whereas the finer tooth on this side holds our colored pencils a little better. So with this type of cardstock, I'm using the smoother, non-honeycomb side. Now, while I'm talking about tooth, if you're out looking for papers and you just want to see what's available in your local stores, I recommend to look at art stores rather than craft stores. Craft stores don't tend to stock a lot of papers, and a lot of the time you'll find sketching papers. Now, sketching papers are quite different because you can imagine when you're trying to draw a straight line, we want quite a smoother paper because we want the lines to be crisp. Whereas when we're doing coloring, we're layering up color in all that texture of the paper to create these complex blends. We need more texture to do colored pencil work. So slightly different types of paper for sketching and illustration versus coloring. And if you're coming to this video from a different background of art, you may use something else as well. So this video is actually aimed towards this sort of style coloring that you see here, where stampers, colorists, crafters, card makers, coming from that sort of world rather than from the fine art sort of world, or if you're doing, say, rendering for design or architecture or something like that. So different disciplines may even use and prefer different types of paper as well. Now, you can go too far with the tooth. So I've got a couple of different papers here I just want to show you. This one I get questions about a lot. It's another Canson brand, but it's the Canson watercolor or mixed media series. Now, hopefully this picks up, but the tooth on this is quite wide. So you'll see that it's really nicely textured, but it's really rough and really large texture. And that's because this paper is made to hold water and paints. So this is going to be a little bit too much for your pencil work. It's going to take you a long time to blend out your pencils. So if you're doing your coloring and you're like, it's really, really tough for me to get this smooth, your paper may be having too much tooth to it. And similarly, we have canvas paper. So I've seen some people grab this one before as well. And again, I've just got a Canson brand here just to show you, but it comes in all different brands. But you can see this looks like almost like hatching on the page. This is basically paper, but it's like canvas, so again, for holding paint. And you can see I did a little scribble down the bottom here. That's with pencil, and you can see it's really hard to cover up just because it's such a thickly textured and woven paper. So we want to stay away from those types and stick with more of the finer tooth, but still something with a bit of grip. We're not looking for smooth. Okay. So let me break down these 4 different types of paper here, and it will probably make a little bit more sense for you. So you can see out of all of these, the brightest one is actually my Mi-Teintes, the one I've used at the top. And the reason for that, it's allowed me to really layer up and color my blends. Now I've just got a color blend here. It's the exact same blend I used in that pencil blending basics video I mentioned earlier. And I just wanted to show you the application of color. So if I lay this down, I go nice and slow and soft, just like we talked about in that pencils blending video. You can see here that it takes the color really nicely. It's a nice vibrancy. I'm able to fade the color off really, really nice. So I'm able to fade that color off really, really nicely and softly. So that when I come in with my next color, sorry, that was pomegranate for those following along. This is Process Red now in my Prismacolor range. I'm applying straight over the top, and you can see I'm able to really build up these colors, and they are nice and vibrant. Now I've got my pink pencil as well. Now you'll notice with this first layer, I still have tooth showing. So whenever we do our pencil work, we always want to have a few little white speckles showing in our shading, because that means that the paper has more grip to it. It has more space to fill, which really helps when you are doing your complex blends and detailing. You want to have a little bit left over. The way we fill that is we come in and we just repeat everything, but with just a smaller stroke. We don't use extra pressure, so you should always be nice and soft, but just a smaller stroke to get it nice and smooth. So you can see here I've got some really good coverage coming in on the second time. The color is nice and smooth as I do the blending here as well. Literally just repeating everything. And if I want to get that fade off, I can grab my white pencil and just come over the edge, and you can see the white works really nicely on this paper as well, just to fade those colors out there. So pretty good coverage, it's sitting really nice, wasn't difficult to blend out the tooth. If you do use this paper and you are finding it hard to blend out your tooth, your strokes may be too big. So I just want to show you what happens when I do that. When my strokes are really long, I skip over the tooth. And so you can see there that if I was to keep blending like this, it's going to be a bit harder to fill in that space. So a little bit smaller is going to help you get that nice and smooth. So in the blend here, in each of these actually I did about 3 coats of the color. So you can see in this one here I just did 2, but I did 3 dark to light each time. So you could see I wasn't trying to do something a little bit different or tricky with each type. Now let's move into the Drawing 220. Now what you'll notice right away, this one has a lot more tooth left over. So both have this 3 amounts of a blend, 3 layers of the blend, but this one here, it looks a little rougher. The color is still nice and bright though. It's almost the same vibrancy as the mid-tone. The tooth is a bit heavier and a bit thicker. So let me just lay down this color so you can see the difference. And you can see right away, the paper is a lot coarser as I lay down that color and as I continue to blend out. It's still blending quite nicely, but definitely I'm getting kind of like these chunks here that are a little bit harder to fill in with the tooth. So it's not as fine and smooth as my mid-tone paper is. Certainly you can still do beautiful coloring with it, but you're probably going to need a little bit more patience to blend it through, and it may take you a little bit longer. And I'm just blending this out with the white so you can see how my white works on this as well. So I'm still getting a really nice blend and fade with the white. I'm not going to spend too much time blending these out. You've got that blending video to help you with that. So I'm just going to keep moving through the different papers so you can see the output that we get. Now, smooth cardstock. I see a lot of people use smooth cardstock with their pencils and hate the results. And then they hate pencils and they never want to try again. We can't use the same cardstock for markers that we use with pencils. They're 2 different mediums and require a different type of card to get the best result from them. Smooth cardstock, you're always going to see the lines between. So if I'm really quick like this, see how it looks messy. Whereas if I come up to here, see the difference already. And this isn't even the good stuff. If I come up to the top, see the difference in here as well. Just doing a quick scribble, you can see better coverage, nice and smooth. Good coverage, but a bit of tooth showing. Color here is a lot more washed out, and I see a lot of the lines between the colors and what I'm doing. So it's not giving me the most optimal result with my pencils. The color as well, you'll notice, is very different, even though it's the same blend. Hopefully this picks up on the camera with the lighting, but it's a lot more washed out and it doesn't have that same level of depth. Now, I'm not saying that you can't practice with this type of card. If you've just bought your pencils and you just want to play, you can use whatever you have on hand. But it's really important that you manage your expectation accordingly. You're not going to be able to jump into one of my classes and get the exact same results if you're using something like this, because you can see straight away, even though my technique hasn't changed, the output has changed. So that's just one thing you just need to compensate and keep in mind. Any practice is good practice. It's growth. It's learning the art theories. It's learning those art fundamentals. But it's just that you can't get upset if the result is a little different, if the mediums are a little different. That's the main reason why I want to bring that up. So let's just do a basic blend like I've been doing on the other ones. So starting with pomegranate. And you can see here already, I don't really have any way to build the tooth up. There's no texture left over. So it's nice that it looks smooth, but I can't build and layer. And that's ultimately why this color is a lot weaker than something like this, because it's just not holding the layer of pigment. It gets to a point where as I overlap these colors, it's just going to stop accepting it, and it's going to be a lot harder to really continue to build, and especially when we do complex blends. So coming down into lighter colors, that's when we start to see lines between the colors, and it doesn't really give us those nice fade out that we would like. White pencil as well doesn't work as good on this one. So you can see here I'm using the white, but I still have quite a strong line where that pink underneath has ended. So the white pencil isn't going to be as effective on your smoother cardstock as well. Now, if you do like to use Canson and solvents, you absolutely can. I'm not saying you can't use these. It's actually something that crafters have jumped on a lot more recently. It's mainly used in fine art to do larger backgrounds and things where you want to speed up the process, because obviously doing all these little layers like this takes a lot of time. So in large areas where it's okay to get a bit textured and you just want like a nice wash of color, that's usually when solvents are used. Whereas for smaller detailed coloring, like bringing back a girl like this, we wouldn't really want to touch that for something like this because we lose that extra detail. Crafters seem to have jumped on Canson and solvents lately because it's just that really quick, easy way to get a smooth, simple blend if they're not trying to do something elaborate. And that's fine, but again, it's going to be similar to this, where you're going to get more of a washed out color, you get less detail and less control. It also is very similar in look to markers. So if you own markers already, there's not really much point coming in and trying to learn using Canson because you're just using two different mediums to essentially get the same look. If you're doing our classes and want to use Canson, by all means, you just do it exactly the same way as I've been doing here. Go back to our pencils blending video and you can take a look. And instead of your final layer, come in and use your solvent then. So still build up your pencil nice and strongly like we've been doing and use that Canson as the final step. So again, nothing wrong with using it if that's what you want to play for, but you're always going to get more control and vibrancy using just the pencils themselves. Now, the reason why I did bring up Canson is that you do want to use a smoother paper with this because you're essentially breaking down this pigment into a paint-like surface. And I wish I had some Canson here to show you, but I don't have any here. You basically come in, you dip a paper stump in, and you just blend sort of from that dark coming through to that light area. And that's just all going to break it all down. You can use a smoother cardstock like this. You can use something like a Bristol. That's a lot smoother of a cardstock as well. So you can play around with those sort of ones for using solvents. But just for your standard pencils, I'd probably stay away from this, the Bristols and things like that, because they're just not going to have the grip to give you this vibrancy. Now, standard copy paper at the bottom. This one here, I'd probably recommend this over smooth cardstock if you have nothing in the house. Like if you just want to play and get started, it has a bit more grip to it. So you can see it's already a lot more vibrant than the smoother cardstock here. And if I come in and start to lay down the paper, you'll see I can actually build it up a little bit and get a bit of the tooth happening. If I do just a quick scribble like this, like I've been doing down the side, I do still have a little room to build up and layer a bit extra. So it's a little bit better than something that's totally smooth, but we do run into that same problem where by the time we've added a few layers of pigment, it stops really accepting more. So that's going to hit the point where you start seeing lines between the colors where it doesn't give you as nice a effect or as vibrant a color. Using your white pencil as well isn't the best on a smooth cardstock, again, just because you don't have as much ability to really layer and push that pigment around. Think of these ones like you get the ability to push your pigment. That's what your colorless blender does, as well as you're pushing that pigment into the surface of the paper so you can really build up that vibrancy. Whereas these ones, you get less of that ability to push because it's just sitting on the surface of the paper when the paper is so smooth. So that's just a little bit of a breakdown between the differences. It's just a quick video today, and I hope it's helped with some extra tips and just helped you understand and see why we recommend different papers over others. Again, there's so many different papers you can use, and you can always check out my website. I've got a big list of papers that I recommend, from more cost-effective ones up to more expensive ones. One thing I am going to mention really quickly before I finish up is you'll notice that when you come into more of the proper drawing papers like this, they are more like a soft yellow tone rather than being more grey based or more true white like these ones here. And that's because when you start getting up into your premium or your drawing papers where they have that texture to them, they actually have an element of cotton to them, which is why the paper is slightly tinted. When you make your cards though, you don't even notice. Like, I make a lot of cards and I just use these products fine. I can distress the edges, ink the edges, do everything like that, and you don't even notice when you're really comparing to your card bases anyway. But you're never really going to find like a true white with these ones to match something like this one here. So again, I hope you found this mini video helpful, and if you have any questions about this, please feel free to ask, or if you have any questions you'd like to see answered in future coloring tips videos, please feel free to pop me a message anytime. If you found this video helpful today, I'd love your help to share it around, and feel free to give me a follow as well, and I'll be doing more coloring tip videos each week. So you can find more answers to popular questions over on my website at kitandclouder.com via the coloring FAQs in the menu bar, and you'll also find free coloring classes on our homepage. So thanks so much for watching, and happy coloring!